Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be substituting for Tuya this evening. This is Michael. And what I would like for us to be able to do is read through some of the destiny of the nations. I'll be trying to take up some different countries about which Master DK wrote, and this evening at least I'll be taking up the United States, which at present is the country most compromised by the coronavirus. And you know, it's because of the nature of the people and what DK has called their adolescence. So even though he wrote this maybe more than 70 years ago, it is filled with prognostication and still indicates what must happen. We will from time to time take up the readings on Russia, on Great Britain or the United Kingdom, on France, on Germany, in general, the countries about which he wrote. And we'll see some of the astrological and ray analysis that he provided, which I think is among the best and can be applied to the individual horoscope as well. So I'm going to switch over here to this to the book itself, and I'll be reading here from page 5960 and then also from page 88 and 89. The United States of America has for its personality ray the sixth ray, and hence much of its personality difficulties. Well, this is clear. This is the ray that is temporarily going out of incarnation. And some of the very negative qualities of the sixth ray are emerging. And there are other countries that have the sixth ray personality, notably the sometimes rival of the United States, which is Russia, and other sixth ray soul nations. Anyway, it indicates that there are many young souls, young in experience, in the United States, maybe ever since the early 1900s or the 20s, let's say. Many of these younger souls came into incarnation in the USA, and now, of course, there is the division between the more experienced types on the second ray and those on the sixth ray. Usually we're talking about souls, even though the personality ray of the United States is the sixth. We find that indicates there are many sixth ray souls in that country. And according to the nature of Gemini, the personality sign, you find them divided politically at this time. So, going on a bit, hence also its strong desire life, impelling it to sex expression and to materiality. But to a materiality which is very different from that of the French. We'll take that up as we go along. For the citizen of the United States values money only for the effects on his life, which it can bring and for what it makes possible. Well, we certainly have with capitalism a very strong dedication to the making of money. And right now, in the global health crisis, there is a conflict between the third ray, ruling money, and the second ray, involved in humanitarianism. This is obvious for everyone to see. The sense of values is emerging worldwide, for better or for worse. So hence also the rapid response of the American continent to every form of idealism, the sixth ray. Remember too, and as strange as it may seem, the United States is the center of the old Atlantean continent. That's remarkable. So the sixth ray, the astralism, is emphasized. So every form of idealism to the need of others, that's the humanitarian side, even of its enemies, as we saw with the Marshall Plan after World War II, allowing the rebuilding of Germany and the nurturing of the Japanese country so that it could rise again. It was not a victory which crushed the enemies once the surrender was signed. To compassion for all suffering, and let's hope we don't lose that, and to a pronounced progress towards a well-defined humanitarianism. These are very positive traits, and we seek to see them sustained. This they may call the democratic ideal, but it is in truth something which grows out of and eventually supersedes democracy. The ideal of a spiritual government, and that's not, a religious government. Some people do not want to see the separation of church and state, which Masonry under Master R has so emphasized. But we're on our way because we light the way. The United States is said to light the way towards the ideal of a spiritual government, a government by the highest and the most spiritual, to be found in every land. And this makes one think perhaps the experiment that Plato suggested in his Republic can be attempted one day in the United States. So DK goes on, hence also their unrealized esoteric motto, light the way. All the various forms of government prevalent in the world today will, after making their great experiment and its resultant contribution, proceed upon the way of enlightened rule. By the illumined minds of the age. This development is certain and inevitable, and indications of this happening can be seen today by those who have eyes to see and a developed inner vision. There are quite a few references to different countries here, and I've always felt that if we're going to do the best evoking the soul of the various nations and thereby the soul of humanity, we have to know as much as possible about the nations. So a good place to begin is with Master DK, and that's what we're doing in the Esoteric United Nations that you may be a member of already. You'd have to, make a pledge to persist if you were to be a member. And we'll come up with a time in the near future where that pledge can be made. It's nothing drastic, but it is a commitment. So let's take a look here at some of the qualities, astrological and rheological, of the United States, and I'll do my best to, when time allows and when the indication is correct, to go into the different nations in this studential way, which will help with the redemption. And right now, because the United States has, whether it would or not, set an example for the world, a good example, or now much less than good example, we have to study these matters. So at least I'll do a little bit of this, and then we'll, as so many students of occultism are doing now, try to contribute to a wise and mature attitude towards the pandemic, which is meant, I'm sure, to bring about desirable changes, though there is already much suffering and will be more, as we can see from the results of ignoring the advice of the most informed in the medical community. So at least a little bit here about the United States. This vast land, at least it does have a very high population, and it's considered maybe to be the 5th largest country. This vast land is ruled by Gemini, linking it therefore closely with Great Britain, whose soul sign is Gemini, and also by Aquarius as the ruler of its soul ray, which links it with, importantly, with Russia, who also has the Aquarius soul ray ruler. So these two nations, and also the United Kingdom, will be very prominent in the emergence of humanity into the Aquarian age, and the development of human destiny, hopefully for the better. This combination of a sixth-ray personality, ruled by Gemini, and a second-ray soul, as has Great Britain, ruled by Aquarius, is potent for future power and usefulness. Well, I think we can understand that, and we can take that into consideration as we look at the potentials of the triangle that holds the destiny of humanity in the way it proceeds forward. The capital city, Washington, and it will not be forever the capital city, DK tells us. The day is coming when New York will take its place. The capital city, Washington, is ruled by Cancer and Sagittarius. And it is this fact which leads the United States to act like the crab, Cancer, and be preoccupied with its own house, which it carries on its back, and to vanish into hiding at the first signs of trouble. So the isolationism of the United States is here called to our attention, and it has, as a first response, gone into isolation. It did it in regard to World War I, and also at first in regard to World War II, all part of the same Great World War. And let us remember that even though the United States is ruled by Gemini and Aquarius, or Aquarius and Gemini, the 4th of July saw the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and that is a Cancerian date. So its major city, Washington, is Cancerian in nature, and the major holiday and indication of independence, incidentally in a sign of dependence, Cancer, is to be noted. Because also the Sagittarian influence is strong, and some people actually look at Sagittarius as the rising sign of the United States. Because also the Sagittarian influence is strong, there is a potent determination to stick one-pointedly to any decision which is made. Now, you know, sometimes we have people in power who vacillate a great deal, and this would hearken to the Gemini rulership. But this is how the Tibetan sees it. Sagittarius, of course, reinforces the sixth ray personality because it is the sign through which at this time the majority of the sixth ray pours. So the Tibetan says this, its sixth ray personality enforces at times, sixth ray enforcing the Sagittarian influence almost to the point of a fanatical blindness and to the detriment of the long-range vision which is needed at such times as these. Well, here we are. Definitely at such times as these, even 70-something years later. It's interesting about Sagittarius how it can be so willfully blind and yet is a sign of long-distance vision and destiny, and associated, I would say, with the pointer that we, well, not the pointer so much as Polaris, the star of direction. towards which the pointers point. Like Russia, this country is in the making, and as I have told you elsewhere, as the nation's power shifts, as it will, and as it now really is shifting from Washington to New York, the Cancerian influence will steadily lessen and the country will take its place as an adult among the nations. So far we see that this is not yet, even not yet, the case. Interestingly, though, there is a strong Cancerian rulership of New York as well. So somehow the United States will not easily give up this self-protective approach, but it is also an inclusive and embracing approach when the higher aspects of Cancer, its compassion, its maternal nature, is accentuated. You will note, says the Tibetan, that none of its zodiacal rulers link it with France, except indirectly through Cancer. You know, France is the fifth ray and the third ray, and Pisces soul and Leo third ray personality. So there is a link via the polar opposites. Capricorn, the polar opposite of Cancer, one of the rulers of Paris. We'll take that up when we take up the country. It is for this reason that such a small percentage, relatively speaking, of French people migrate to the States. That's interesting, you know, and tells us about the links between nations based upon their energy equipment. There is a closer link with Italy than with France, and hence the large Italian population. For Sagittarius rules both Italy and Washington. Italy in the personality sense, and Spain in the soul sense. So he gives us the influences, and when we're thinking of how best to help the soul of the nations in these troubled times, we want to take these kinds of things into consideration. Aquarius rules the soul, and it has rulers of Uranus, Jupiter, and the Moon, which also veils Uranus and Neptune and Vulcan. Gemini rules the personality of the United States with its rulers Mercury, Venus, and Earth, and all of them will be active. Cancer, the rulers Moon and Neptune, rules the capital in the soul sense, and Sagittarius with its rulers Jupiter, the Earth, and Mars rules the personality of the capital, Washington, and the soul ray is love, wisdom, and the personality ray is idealism and devotion. Now, right there, you have a great combination of energies to consider when thinking of the psychology, the activity, the destiny of the United States and of any nation when this kind of listing is given. So far we don't have a full listing by any means. DK has given partial information. Who knows why? Maybe this was enough to assimilate. But if we begin here, and then maybe study Russia and the United Kingdom, or Great Britain as he so often calls it, at first we'll get an idea of how to proceed. So I think I'm not going to get into right now the indirect influences via the planetary rulers, and there are many, and the rays conditioning the country are consequently many because they come through the planets. And what we often fail to realize is that the planets, like a human being, have more than one ray, and that more than one ray situation is active. I mean, when you're dealing with Venus, for instance, you can't only use the fifth ray, because the second ray and the sixth ray will be very active as well. And thus it goes with many planets that contribute their additional rays to the development of the nation they represent. So the rays conditioning this country are consequently many, owing to the mixture of races found there. And this is where, DK can differentiate between the nation and the country. There are representatives of many nations in such a large melting pot as the United States, and so it is in Russia, and so it is in the United Kingdom, more and more. So, of these influences, there are 11 in all. For the Earth presents two aspects, I think both Sagittarius and Gemini, and the Moon veils both Vulcan and Uranus, and, I would think even Neptune, contributing to the idealism of the people. So, that should be enough of the academic material for the moment. And hopefully, let's see, I think I've just wiped out something here that I didn't mean to do. Okay, so let's see. That'll be enough. Okay, there we go. And I'll have to remember that. And, Tuya does these presentations in a different way than I do, so that when I do them, I'll try to emphasize some of these things that I've started. But this is quite intricate, what's coming up here. Just to have in mind that we have a compassionate soul ray and an idealistic personality ray, and we have the conflict between the two accentuated by the personality sign Gemini, but overall an indication of wholeness to come through the universality of Aquarius. And basically, on the Statue of Liberty, or in relation to it, the poem, give me, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. This is the Cancerian maternal embrace. And idealism is strongly emphasized in the combination of the six-ray personality and the Sagittarius rulership of the personality of its present capital. We will find that the capital city and its energies are secondary, but not very secondary. We will find that they are very influential in these nations. Now, obviously, we have to know a little bit of astrology to be able to deal with what DK presents in this destiny of the nations, and we're offering that in the science of triangles, which is occurring like every let's see, every Wednesday, either in the morning or the evening, depending on the cycle. So you may want to join us, and that would be a webinar. Okay, now that will be it for that. Now I'm going to go back and tune in together on this very challenging situation which we have all worldwide. I think we haven't seen anything yet. A universal epidemic was predicted and was one of the means by which Sanat Kumara could bring about the elimination of a number of forms which had outlived their usefulness. We can't specify what those are, but his intention was to bring about greater preparation for entry into the Aquarian Age, and there's nothing like the community of suffering to do that. And of course, of the United States that we're focusing on right now, he said, fortunately for the soul of that great people, much suffering lies ahead. And we can see it shaping up. So the main thing we can do with any of these countries is visualize the great Lord, the Christ, in the midst of the nation. Of course, maybe we have one picture here with him in the midst of the world. And that's the most important thing. Contributing his great illumination, his great love, and his great sacrificial will. Do we have in modern times any better example of the sacrificial will than the approach of the Christ, who is both Savior and teacher, and the divine psychologist, which will give humanity a better understanding of itself. In the 2,000-year approximately period that he is with us. So let's just think of him in the midst of everything. And as we study country by country, it's important to be directive in a way and see the Christ in the midst of that country where his nature can help to supply the needs, the real needs of that particular nation, country. We try to see the particular needs of every country, and in this case the United States, being fostered by the great Lord. Of course, first and foremost, compassion and the great light. It's very clear, is it not, that with a motto like, "I light the way," the United States, at least at this time, is meant to set an example. It is a great experiment under Master R, who is the regent of the United States, and the new order of the ages is to appear, at least in germ, in seed in the United States, and set a good example. Not an example reeking with egotism and self-concern, the very opposite of what is intended. And when we gather in the name of the great Lord, we remember that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response, shall see it accomplished. Obviously, no selfish request will be accomplished, but when we wish for the emergence of the soul of the different nations, we can say that we are working in His name. Whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response, shall see it accomplished. And so we say, and you know this mantra, I'll do it twice. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. So let us carry the image of the Christ in our heart, and wherever there is need, and there's need everywhere, let us transpose the image of His presence and invocatively attempt to call forth His energy into the various nations which need supplementation, support for their best qualities, which, of course, are their soul qualities. And we can continue to work behind the scenes as if in a group, as if this little project, the Esoteric United Nations, can be of some value. And for those who wish to make the commitment, we can, day by day, for the time being, invoke the presence of the Great Lord to assist in the evocation of the soul of any particular nation that we may be concentrating upon. So now let us use the greatest instrument we have to facilitate in the right way the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ, the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the Masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you everyone for participating, and tomorrow we will continue with our invoking money for hierarchical purposes. It's the crux of the problem, the Tibetan tells us. So we have to be generous, and we have to invoke the generosity of others, and then the evocation will come. The Christ and his hierarchy certainly deserve it, and it's in the best interest of the planet. So we'll be with you in the evening, and it will be a broadcast at this same live link, YouTube live link. And we look forward to working with you. So lots of love, many blessings from Tuya and myself, and from the whole team that is working in the communications area to bring you these various broadcasts and webinars. We'll see you tomorrow.